Hey everyone, Piano Man Chuck here. Today I want to talk about Casio pianos, the Privia line in particular, and why I happen to love that so much. Starting with Casio. Way back in the day, before digital pianos, especially 88 key pianos, were becoming popular, Casio had one of the first digital pianos out, and it was actually considered a toy piano by many, and I had one of them. And for the first time, I was not glued to a 500-pound baby grand piano. And it was so liberating. I sat at that little toy Casio piano for hours on end, even though they weren't even the right key size. They were miniature keys and all that stuff. So I was ecstatic when they started coming out with real 88 key digital pianos that could more or less mimic real pianos. And they've gotten better over the years, but Casio came out with a Pro line, the Privia line, and that, first of all, backing up, when they had that toy line, when the Privia line came out, people kind of had a stigma towards Casio, thinking, oh, they associated that with toy pianos. They've come a long way. They're giving the likes of Korg and Roland and Kawai and all other manufacturers a run for their money. They are really a major player at this point, and every time they come out with a new model, they just blow the competition away. So let's start out with my first Casio, and before I go into that, let me back up. Before I had a professional Casio piano, I had Yamahas. I started out with P85, I think the model was. Then I graduated to a P120, which had a wonderful keyboard action, but the sound of the piano was just, it just sounded electronic to me. I really didn't like it. I couldn't enjoy the piano very much, but I didn't have much of a choice back in those days. So what I did was I was looking for other pianos. I loved the Yamaha keyboard action, which they don't do anymore until you get to more expensive actions. But back then they had a really nice action in that P120. So I was looking around, and then I came across this brand by mistake called Privia, not realizing that it was Casio. So I tried this Privia out, and the keyboard action was absolutely wonderful. I mean, it's not an acoustic grand piano or anything like that, but it is a lot better than a lot of the other actions out there in the market today, put out by Korg and Roland and Kurzweil and Nord and some of the other major players. The keyboard action on the Casios is really good, and it's consistent. When you buy a Casio Privia series, especially one of the modern pianos today in the Privia series, you're getting the same keyboard whether you are spending $500 or $1,500. So across the line, you are getting their only or their best keyboard action. And it just blows away some of the other manufacturers out there. Now, it's not like the top of the line Kawais or the top of the line Yamahas, which you're going to pay a few $1,000s for the Kawais, or many thousands of dollars for the Yamahas. Those actually feel like grand pianos. But the Casio action, it feels like a top of the line upright piano. And don't get me wrong, because I played some upright pianos where the action is actually better than some of the lesser expensive grand pianos. Let's put it that way. But anyway, it is a consistent action. It's really good. You talk to a lot of pianists out there that have tried some of the Casios. It just blows them away how good that action is. So, rewinding the clock to my first professional Casio. It was a PX330, and it really, for the amount of money that I paid for it, It served multiple purposes. Not only could I play piano on it, not only could I make studio recordings with it, not only could I take it to the band where I had multiple different voices with me so I could play different parts to different songs. It served a lot of purposes, and it was like 20 some odd pounds, which was unheard of for that type of action. So then they came out with the PX 350, and it was improved action, and the action they have on that is still the same action that you're going to find on today's Casio Privia models. It has, some simulated ivory and ebony keys, so even if you're sweating, it's not going to slip. Your fingers aren't going to slip on the keys. So the PX 350 had longer samples, it had longer sustain, and a lot of improvements from the PX 330. So I picked up a PX 350, and I listed the PX 330 on Craigslist. And to my surprise, it sold in 1 hour. I kid you not, 1 hour. Unbelievable. And it turns out the Casios actually kind of hold their value. No, you're not going to get what you paid for it, but you're not going to take a major loss like you are with some of the more expensive other brands out there. It pretty much holds its value, and it is in demand. It is a great digital piano. So I sold the PX 330, which helped me pay for the PX 350. And the PX 350 I used for many years. I used it for solo piano, I used it for the band that I was in, and I used it as kind of a controller to control some of the virtual or soft pianos that you could find available for your computer. So that was a wonderful find over there. Then, after that point, they came out with the Privia PX5S. All right. Now that was different. That was not only, it was the same key action, like I said, all of them are going to have the same key action. It was also a synthesizer, and it was also a master controller. It wore many hats, and even though I'm not into sound design, I still had use for it. With the sliders and everything, I can control the EQ and so on and so forth. And it was a wonderful controller. So that's what I used for a long time, but I still preferred the PX 350. The PX 350 was just so simple to use. Whatever voice you wanted, you just punched that in. You had that. You could split the keyboard. You actually even had a multi-track recorder built into it. It's not a professional one, but it was more like a scratch pad. You had an idea for a song. You didn't have to go ahead and hook up a computer or anything. You could do it right there, standalone. And with the exception of that PX5S, all of the Privias that I've owned have also had a built-in amp and speakers. So you could take this pretty much anywhere and gig, whether it was a restaurant or a private party in somebody's backyard or living room or wherever it was. As long as you had power for AC, then you could go ahead and gig with it because it had a built-in amp and speakers. Then I discovered a rechargeable battery pack that would work with this. It's called RAV Power. You might want to look up some of my videos on that. But you could power the Casio Privia series with that RAV power unit and take this anywhere in the world because you weren't limited to AC mains anymore. A mountain, a beach, a rave, wherever. It was great. Alright, so the 350 served me well for a long time. The PX5S also served me well for a long time, but I'm not a sound designer, and that is a sound designer's dream. I'm not much of a synthesizer player, and that's a synthesizer player's dream. Okay? So then they came out with the PX560, and that was more to my liking. So I picked up the 560, which is this one, which is a beautiful blue color, and you can't even appreciate the color looking at the video that you're watching right now. You have to be here in person. It is striking. It really is a nice blue. But not being a sound designer and being strictly a pianist or a parts guy for a classic rock band, different kind of parts, whether it was horns or strings or whatever. This takes what the 5S offered, and they gave you a touch screen with it, and they give you graphic information or displays with it. So now you could play around with a lot of stuff, and even though I'm not a sound designer, I played around with that, and all of a sudden, voila, I'm starting to come up with new sounds, even though that's not my thing. So the PX560 is built for people that want to dabble on sound design, and wow, you can do so much with this. In fact, the pianos alone, you can configure so many different ways of doing a piano that I had another video out there. It was called something like the PX560 Unlimited Piano, whatever it was. I'll put a link in the description and you can check that out. But basically, this had everything I need. It had line inputs, it had the pitch bend wheel, it had the mod wheel, it had everything, the legacy MIDI. You could do so much with this, and the built-in amp and speakers could cover you for small gigs. I couldn't sing its praises enough. So when I picked this up, I sold the PX5S to cover the cost of this. Well worth it. So, but if you are one of those people that are looking for a master controller, the PX5S is your calling. The PX560, if you're not looking for so much for a master controller, but basically piano, where you control things like Ivory or Ravenscroft or Piano Tech running on your computer, this is perfect for that. All right, there's another Casio piano that came out, was the CGP series, which stood for Compact Grand Piano, and I picked up the CGP 700, which was a cool piano. It had the interface on it, which was touchscreen. That was cool too, and you could separate it from its bench to take it on gigs. I gigged with that for a long time, but putting it back on its bench, 40 watts of power, which was pretty much unbelievable for its price range, 20 watts on each side, and you had this little section where the woofers were, and you could take those woofers and either have it face the audience when you're doing a live performance, or turn it around and face you. So either way, it was a phenomenal piano. So when you're talking about Casio Privia series and now the CGP series as well, you get the same keyboard action, which is cool. Unlike some other manufacturers where the more money you pay, the better the keyboard action there is. Well, with Casio, you get the same keyboard action. The more money you pay, the more features you get, the more polyphony you get, and you have things like more control over the different piano samples that are in here. As far as piano samples, all of the Privia line uses Steinway piano samples. Now, Steinway, not only the most recognized name in the world, but also the recognized sound for pianos in the world. When you hear a piano and it's a Steinway, whether it's sampled on one of these boards or a real Steinway, that's what you're used to. When you hear something else like a Yamaha or a Kawai or a Bosendorfer, completely different sound. So Steinway is the most recognizable piano sound in the world. That's what you got here. You can tweak it and so on and so forth. But the main thing that I haven't even gotten into with the Casio Privia series, those pianos, these digital pianos, weigh anywhere from 24 to 26 pounds. Unreal. For the kind of keyboard action that you get with this, 24 to 26 pounds is just unheard of. In fact, that's so light, you can take one of these under one arm and take a second one under another arm and walk over to a gig, or if you're busking out to the street, whatever. And another manufacturer, at twice the weight, you're going to use two hands to carry it. Granted, you've got gig bags, carry bags with wheels, and so on and so forth, but still, that weight is there. At some point, you are going to take that piano into both hands and put it onto your stand and set it up for your gig, and it gets heavy. But 24 to 26 pounds, that is like a miracle. Where else can you get this kind of keyboard action with that kind of weight? So that was a godsend to me. But the PX 560 has everything that I need as a performing pianist and as a parts guy for a classic rock band. Now, for other people, if all you want to do is have this in your living room and have it sound good, get the CGP 700. You won't regret that. If you want to take it with you, you take something like the PX 360, and it doesn't really matter which of the PX series of the Privia brand that you go with, they're all good. It's just a matter of how many features you want, how much control you have over the piano, and I'll tell you, the case for all of them is pretty much the same. They just drill different holes and sections here to accommodate different knobs and buttons and sliders and so on and so forth. The case is tried and true for a long time. Again, I have been using this for years, and I have never once put a scratch on it. I have bumped it into all kinds of walls and everything. There's never been a crack on it. And as far as the key action, I have never had a problem with it. It has been reliable. In fact, when you go ahead and buy one of these Privia series, you get a certain type of warranty. I forget whether it was 1 or 3 years. But if you go ahead and register it online to the Casio website, you get an extra couple of years with it. When you have that kind of warranty, the manufacturer is basically saying, we stand behind our product so well that we're going to give you a couple of extra years just for registering on our website. And I'll tell you, and the whole time that I've had Casio Privia or CGP pianos, I've never had a need for a warranty. I've never had a scratch or a dent or a crack or anything. These things are built solid. Even though they're plastics to keep the weight down, they are built solid. So I cannot highly recommend these enough to either starting pianists, professional musicians, studio musicians, gigging pianists. I mean, you even had Joe Sample play one of these. And this is one of the digital pianos that I cannot live without, especially going to gigs, for its lightweight, its great piano quality, and so on and so forth. The features in here, I mean, for the bang for your buck, you get the most bang for your buck with the Casio Privia. Go ahead and check it out against any other digital piano manufacturer, and you'll find the same thing to be true. So, Piano Man Chuck, you've been watching me for years. I can't recommend the Privia series enough. Piano Man Chuck, peace out. Thanks for watching.